You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
That too. Hey, folks, welcome to another edition on the Trail with Kevin and Scott. Show 195, and already I'm flubbing and can't mix my words up. I am Scott, the slapstick parts guy, both on a continual mission to not only rule the day and also ruin my own train of thought, but also help Kevin ruin his train of thought, because I actually forgot what we were talking about with today's show, besides the Webster's 2 dictionary I'm staring at. Dictionary, one of the two.
Getting your words wixed, aren't you?
I'm getting my words very wixed, and with that, I will turn it over to Kevin, the co-host and engineer of the podcast. Kevin, good morning.
Why don't you just finish my intro?
Nah.
Oh, God. As he said, I'm the engineer.
I hit record.
I am a retired engineer. Got all the little plaques on the wall and things that basically told the world it was okay to sue me if I screwed up.
That's smart.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But anywho, I'm the guy that reads instructions, typically uses the right tools, and most of the time follows the instructions unless there's a reason I want to deviate. But then I know I'm responsible for what the outcome is. So with that, we're going to have what did we decide on?
Tech Bites.
Yeah, Tech Bites show.
Not Tech Bites.
No, Tech Bites. Just little short snippets of questions people have asked and some sort of answer, creative or otherwise, as well as just little bits of technical information or just Jeepisms that people have been asking for.
Exactly.
So...
Well, I have to, because George made a comment, I think it was George, about when I did my bulbs and my LED bulbs.
Oh, yeah, he made the comment that, you're
I'm breaking tradition. Yeah.
You're breaking tradition. You're not letting parts marinate quite well.
Yeah. Autumn would say different with the air conditioner in the garage, but moving on with that. But with that, no, actually, I got those things slapped in because I wanted them, because, again, I'm a sucker for that now. I know getting ready to get home in the dark now, so might as well be able to see the spider when I try to kill it. But other than that, I also got the oil changed in the Jeep, the LJ.
Ooh.
Yeah, it only took a year. And I wish I was joking.
How many miles was it?
4,832.
So it wasn't exactly.
Yeah, but you still, like you tell me, because of the moisture, you should still do it, and I did, and I can tell you that oil came out as black as my soul. But got the fresh oil, the dyno squeezins in. Mm-hmm. Everything good to report so far. Enjoying driving the LJ. I love that thing as always. But that was pretty much the end of my tech segments. Really, that's only like literally the tech bite, unless you want to talk about a septic tank, but we don't want to talk about that anymore. That idea stinks. So with that,
you've been waiting 3 shows to cram that one in.
I know, right? A birthday and a septic tank drain field. Go me, yes.
Well, first thing I'm going to have to go with here is a little bit of a shout out to Rockslide Engineering.
Yes,
and guys, I've had my steps for.
Almost as long as you've had the lift.
Probably 8 years, 8 or 9 years are generation 1. And for those, new, I had a lot of issues with my passenger side one, not really because there was anything wrong with the steps, but they weren't used enough. Yeah. Okay. My wife was one who gets in and out, and it just, inactivity is not good for bearings and moving surfaces. Mm-hmm. And we finally got it resolved and working well. That's not a problem there. But the original corrosion had gotten into some of the pins and the bushings and had chewed them up. And so it was sticking and doing all kinds of things that were annoying. And during that, figuring it all out, Rockslide was fantastic. Their customer support answered questions, gave me suggestions of how to deal with it. Then came along this year, and my driver's side step. After so many years, the motor went, and it just, it's a motor that's originally designed for Ford truck and large car windows, right and the left, and it just, I ran the brushes out of it, and since I had lots of experience, I'm like, well, I'll just order me a replacement window motor. Yeah. They changed the style.
Oh, no.
And it has to do with the fact that there's a crank in place of the gear that's used for your windshield. Not your windshield, for your side windows, that runs on the scissor mechanism. And you normally take a little C-ring off, pull that little gear off, and then it comes out of a hole. On the ones that 8 years old ago, they were little squares, and they had a crank arm that Rockslide had made that just slid right over the same shaft into the square hole, and you put it back in, and everything was hunky-dory. I changed a few of those on the passenger side, but never done it on the driver's side. So I ordered a replacement, side window motor.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, Ford changed the style and forgot to tell me. The little hole in the middle wasn't a square anymore.
Mm-mm.
It was a star, kind of gearish shape, but really a star, like a Torx.
Yeah.
Square does not fit in the Torx. Yeah. And I'm thinking, well, okay, I'm going to cobble parts from A and put it in B and get my square drive worm gear. That's the big round one that the worm screw turns.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of fit, but they changed the housing too. So it kind of didn't fit. And the housing doesn't go together with screws anymore. It's a press fit snap lock. And it didn't want to snap back in after being unsnapped.
And now it's left-hand thread compared to being right-hand thread.
Well, no, that didn't happen, thank God, because I did use the correct handing on them. But anyhow, I'm going, as I reported last show, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the fact that, we went up to Jasper. I'm going, I want my step to work.
Yeah.
My wife's works fine right now, but I want my step to work. So I'm calling all the way. I'm calling Dorman. I'm calling every parts store. I go into places and ask them, can I look at this and check to see if it's what style the motor is? And of course, you'd think somebody'd have an NOS part. No, nobody.
Yeah, no.
Nobody. And so I believe it was Kyle, and I apologize if I got your name wrong because my book with notes on its way on the other side of the room. But anyway, I talked to Kyle finally at Rockslide Engineering. Mm-hmm. I said, let me call them, see if they know where I can get these. And, it's not often that you call a product support and the person answering the phone actually knows the product to the point that I can go, hey, Kyle, I've got one of your original set of steps, and the window motor on that side is the center square drive that hooks to your crank arm. And I'm getting nothing but star types now. And he goes, oh, yeah, I know about that. You do. Do you have any access to the ones with square drives? Nope. So what are you guys doing? The whole market's changed. He said, we changed the arm. Can I get an arm?
Yeah.
He's like, well, let me see. He says, yeah, we can probably get you an arm. He says, it'll come with the crank dog bone, the connecting link, if that's all right. I said, yeah, that's fine. And we went on the discussion over the bits and the parts and the changes, and we talked a little bit about why I was having this problem. I said, it's not a warranty issue. 8 years and lots of trashing. I said, long story short, I said, look, while you're at it, send me two. Because if I need to have to do my wife's side again, I want to have the right crank assembly to go into the replacement motors. And he says, not a problem. I'll send you a set. I said, okay, what owe you? And he says, I'll just send you a set. All right. Now, folks, this is unusual. I am 8 years out of warranty. Well, I'm 7 years out of warranty, but their support has been phenomenal. Mm-hmm. But my second surprise came when I got the delivery box. This is right before I left for Sheriff's Jeep Fest up in Jasper, we talked about last show. And I was like, oh, it came literally right on the forebrazes of the hurricane.
Right.
And it was on my porch the day before I was due to leave. And I'm like, well, I've gotten pretty good at field stripping these steps if need be. And I can do it myself in about 3.5 minutes. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I can have them off. Got them off, opened the box, expecting to have to, okay, now I can put this part on here. I'd bought a new star drive motor, ready to go in, so I didn't have to use the one that I had bunged up. Nice. And I opened the box, and there's full motors in there. Motors, cranks, and dog bones. And I didn't look a gift horse in the mouth, per se. I did call back. I didn't talk to Kyle again, but I talked to someone else. I said, guys, they just don't worry about it. We understand that you were fighting the star drive, but they've changed again, and now they're hex drive. And we figured rather than send you hex drive and have you go, what the heck? They just sent me motors.
Cool.
That kind of customer service and attention to somebody is phenomenal. Now, I'm not saying just because they provided them to me gratis. They didn't have to do that. I was willing to pay. I did not ask. They are not a sponsor of the show either. They're just really good people. And before you say anything, well, it shouldn't have worn out, you have no idea how many thousands and thousands of times my driver steps been up and down. I drove this thing to work as a daily driver for years, trail drove it, used it around the farm, used it for the move. It's always worked. And the passenger side, like I said, when it didn't work, it was strictly due to actual lack of usage.
Right.
And it was just kind of getting rusty inside. And these folks, they know their product. They know it inside out. What I like about it is it's rebuildable. The bushings are available on McMaster car. It's gone up and down. I've worn out linkage pieces.
Yeah.
Scott, help me. We talked about this 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Being able to take regular 1/8-inch flat steel, trace out the pieces and mark the holes for the correct locations and drill round holes rather than the rather ovalistic ones.
Yeah.
So, and what this isn't about the steps. This is about customer support. A particular vendor who has really stepped up the game. So my hat's off and appreciation to everybody. Kevin, you know who you are, the owner. You got some great people working for you, but they do what the boss tells them. So thank you, and thank everybody underneath you. Support has been incredible. Thanks. And by the way, to those of you who have them and are listening, they now on their website have parts. You don't have to call them. They actually have a page of parts, and they go through all the different models they have, and you can buy this motor and dog bone set. You can buy it for, the longers, the shorters, the different models of steps that they've come out with, the other equipment. So now you don't even have to really think about it and explain. You just have to go and pick your picture and go, order me one. And their prices are reasonable.
Yeah.
Believe me, I've bought enough of the motors because the same motor is not only used on my Jeep steps, it's used on my RV's kick out footboard. It's a very common, product. So their prices, for the fact that they're already modifying it for you, putting the cranks on and that kind of stuff, and giving you the dog bones and at least the one set of bushings. Yeah, you're not paying any more than you buy just going down to the parts store and buying a window motor.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
Well, that's cool.
So what else do we got going on?
Well, we got a few listeners' emails. One, let's see, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, well, sorry for that, folks, because if he doesn't remember it, I guarantee you I don't. Because he's the one that read the name. Or was he over there looking at his phone?
No, I'm going to look at it real quickly. I would go ahead and make sure I get this right because I want to give the proper credit to the proper
questioner.
Exactly. Let's see here. Mitch wanted to know if we talked about the Aw4 transmissions.
Okay, well, no, not really. I haven't had a whole lot of questions about the Aw4. For those that are curious, the Aw4 was the 4-speed automatic that was offered in a lot of the WJs back quite a bit. Let's see here now. Let's see, 87 to 2001, according to my notes here. In XJs and a few other places. It was only used, well, I think there were a few behind 2.5 liter straightforward, but most of the time it's been the 4 and the 4.2s.
Yeah.
It's basically 3 forward gears on overdrive. It's got a torque converter that has the lockups that were a big fuel economy thing. The biggest thing I can tell you about them was I remember test driving an XJ back in that time frame, and with a 4-cylinder, with an Aw4, and being in a parking lot with the air conditioner on and turning my wheel hard way over as I was trying to roll out, and the torque converter locked up and the engine stalled. The programming wasn't the greatest in the combination of gears. Now, overall, I haven't heard it was a bad transmission. I have not heard anything that said it was terrible and wore down or whatever, but it is a hydraulically driven. There are some solenoids, that fire it off, so it does have electrical control into it. There are a couple of different spline counts. There was, I think, through 90, a 21 spline input, and then 1 pulse per revolution read output speed sensor. Then there were some others, I think, that were the 23 from mid-90s through 95, and they had a different overdrive ratio. So there are some minor differences. So if you go play in mix master on those two, you need to know what your spline count is on your transfer case and whether or not it's going to match up. It's the same sort of thing that we used to have with the manuals and those kinds of things, that you had the 21 count spline or you had the 23 count spline, and so you just have to match it up, and you're not stuck if you get the wrong one. There are the input parts to an NP231 are available that you can put the input gear and just change it to the spline count. It does require breaking the transfer case apart, but it's probably cheaper to break it apart than to tear the transmission apart.
Yeah.
The output shaft. It's there's a bunch of little subnets. There's a great website on the NAXJA site, which is the XJ site. They've got a great 3-page everything you wanted to know about the AW4.
Right.
And it's very informative. There are some little things that can be done. Overall, it's really not showing up as a bad or a good transmission. I don't think I'd put it behind a V8 per se.
Right.
But that's kind of my take on it. They did, of course, revamp the whole thing and come up and change over to the 727 torque flight concept out of Dodge, which the Jeepers know as the 32 RL or RLE, if it's the electronic version, and then the 42 RLE, which is the 4-speed version, which I have in my rig. And both of which are off of the history of the 727 torque flight, which was a fairly durable 3-speed pure hydro transmission, bringing it up into the more modern age.
Yeah.
But again, for the years it was made, it was considered a pretty decent transmission.
Yeah, the only thing I remember seeing a lot of the forums and everything else was heat. Everyone suggests running a transmission cooler because they do generate a lot of heat, especially in the XJ packages.
Yeah,
so,
well, and that was more not the transmission's fault, because almost all early automatic, particularly early 4-speeds, even the GM's early 4-speeds, were hot transmissions. They just didn't have a good way to handle the energy, and so they dissipated its heat into the oil and either dumped it into the radiator internal cooler or had a secondary. And I think the XJ started out with it started out with an internal cooler with that secondary fan. You had the two of them, and they benefited from a separate upfront radiator kind of a thing. In fact, putting them in line was probably the smartest thing.
Oh, yeah.
But it's getting to be a rarer transmission now in terms of finding one in good shape. You're going to almost be moving into take it down to the transmission shop and get it overhauled.
Yeah, well, like our friends at Remco and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so let's see. And do I think you need to change it out? No, not really.
Yeah.
It works. Is it outstanding? No, I haven't found too many Jeep transmissions that would be considered outstanding.
I beg to differ. The 9-speed. The 9-speed in the Gladiator and in the JLs, I am a fan. Sorry.
Oh, no. I know they give you
8-speed. Holy cow.
Yeah, but that's not really, you haven't really put it through the thrashings yet.
No.
Let's see how they hold out with climbing up, going out to Utah and doing the high temperatures. And I will simply agree to say that the jury's still out on those 8 and 9 speeds in it.
Okay.
I know you liked it in your Charger.
I love it in the Gladiator, too.
Yeah.
It's a nice transmission.
Yeah. And what was that? You complaining about tow ratings before?
No. I just know it's going to be thirsty. Yeah, no. It's not the tow ratings I was comparing about.
We'll see. I'm not going to negative or positive.
Hey,
I'm just
two words for you right now. All right?
Can't even count.
To read my lips.
So you said somebody else had some more questions on the 4 poppers.
Yes. The 4 poppers. Okay, that was a good one. I guess while I'm looking up the question of the 4 poppers, Richard asked if we knew about the Jeep Wave and its origins. And I'm like, oh.
Yep. Well, Richard, I I cannot do a good Winston Churchill, but he plays into this, believe it or not. Now, first thing, let me back up and give you the disclaimer. There's a lot of disagreement on the history of the Jeep Wave. And I'm going to give you the story and information that was given to me by my father. My father joined the Army just after World War II and migrated over to the Air Force and the Army Air Corps. And he basically knew of the Jeep Wave, even though he was not a Jeeper. He was a hot rodder, kind of into the Firebirds and the hot cars at that time. But he explained it to me because I asked him when I was a child, back in the CJ years, the early CJ years, the 5s were still common, I think even before the 7s came out. And I did witness some Jeepers waving at each other. So we're going way back there, folks. We're going back into the early 60s that the memory was catching up. And I asked him, and he said, well, he didn't call it the Jeep Wave. He called it the Quartermaster Wave. So take that disclaimer. This is the best I can give you. And I've seen it written this way several times. But when you get ready to start the Jeep was ordered, as we talked to several shows ago with Paul Bruno, as a combination from the Quartermaster's Corps, the Intel Corps for scout cars, and there were a bunch of groups, let's just say, in the Army kind of wanting this technology. We are talking about the transition literally from horses and mules to mechanized warfare. And so long story short, here we have this small scout car that can also haul up to a 1/4 ton, which was a quartermaster's doing, getting the 1/4 ton into it. And so during the war, World War II, it was used for both purposes. And in fact, it was probably used as much or more for hauling stuff than it was for, going out and doing forward scouting.
Right.
But that's just, again, for what I've read. However, from the quartermaster point of view, you're on there in a small vehicle, usually with the passenger seat pulled out, with the Jeep stuffed with probably way more than a 1/4 ton of ammo and stuff and bandages and food and you name it. And you're getting as close to the front as the receiving front line people can con you into coming.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this puts you in harm's way. No question about it. All right. So what's that got to do with a wave? Well, if you're making a run in a 1/4 ton, but you've come in a 1.5 deuce, which is 2.5 tons, it takes a couple of trips. And usually it's not one Jeep to 1.5 deuce. It's a group. It's kind of like a movement, military movement, supply movement moving up. So you come from the depot through the vehicles to the forwards. The forwards may go further with the 2.5 tons, and then you've got Jeeps making the runs.
Yeah.
And the idea is you're moving, you're fast, you're fleet, you're not a fixed target. Okay. Well, if you're making the run out to the front and you get all the way up to your receiving office, wherever they told you, to go drop it, and your people are there and they take your stuff and you turn around, you floor it back at the whopping 35 to 45 miles an hour that the Jeep will go, wide open throttle in 4th gear with your head down, and you're clear. Well, you're likely to pass your mate bringing another load in as you're heading back. Okay. And there was a hand signal, because you're not going to stop and you're not going to scream at the top of your lungs. You're just going to hand signal. And there's an all clear, kind of a warning. It's kind of dicey. And then there's supposedly a turnaround.
Yeah.
There's nothing there but a crater, kind of things aren't good. So you kind of had these hand signals, and they evolved, I think, independently at each location. But then you turn around to Winston Churchill's event where he had there, we shall fight. And you guys may have heard it. We shall go to the end. We shall fight in France. We'll fight on the seas and in the oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight them on the beaches. We shall fight them on the landing grounds, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And as he did this speech, if you look at the old TV footage, the old black and white, real footage, you will see him giving this speech, stogie in one hand, microphone in front of him on a stand, and his other hand raised with a V for victory. And he's shaking that victory. Well, according to my dad, he said that he was told by some of the older quartermaster guys that, well, after that speech was shown in the tents, the newsreel came around to all of the troops that could have them. You didn't get it on the front line. I'm sorry, but any of the backhand or backside support elements was seeing these movie reels, and they saw this speech as a kind of a morale booster. Blah blah blah. Well, he said that he was told that the guys coming back, kind of on the all's clear, started raising the V for victory. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what's it got to do with the Jeep Wave at home? Well, let's move on. We're after 45, we're now back home celebrating victory in Japan, victory in Europe, VE and VJ Day. And the guys are back. And of course, now everybody's mustering out. Well, if you were in the Quartermaster Corps and you saw the new ads for the new CJ2A, and all the other Willies, and you were on a farm, or maybe you had a business that needed a small vehicle, it was just all kinds of things. The group advertised, Willys advertised this everywhere. They made farm equipment. You've seen that. If you've been watching anything about the Jeep, done any history, that they had trenchers. Utility companies were using them for running new power lines to all these new Levittown subdivision things, and all of this stuff. And they were really harping this. And the first people that were reported to be interested in buying them was people that drove them in the war.
Mm-hmm.
So you were in the Quartermaster. You knew a Jeep. You walked into a dealership and you go, yeah, I know this. I know how to start it. I know how to drive it. Just give me the keys.
Yeah.
Now you're driving down the road and you see another Jeep girl coming at you. Do you know this guy? I don't know. Do I know? Well, he's driving a Jeep. Is he Quartermaster? Now, if you're in the military, you know what I'm talking about. You start looking around. If you see somebody flying your unit insignia, even if they were decades after you were in, if you're 4ID and you see someone with a 4ID patch, you usually go over to them and say hi. If you're something, So,
it might even be second nature. Just all of a sudden, their hand
your hand reaches out and you give them a Jeep wave, and the other guy waves back, and if nothing else, even if you don't start, there's another Quartermaster.
Mm-hmm.
Not a Quartermaster, but a soldier from the Quartermaster Corps. And as often as not, if you saw them at the local VFW or whatever they were doing at the time, or wherever, you'd strike up a conversation, and it became kind of a
cult.
Yeah, kind of a little get together.
It's a head nod.
It's a head nod. It's an acknowledgement. It's what we today. Thank you for your service. It was that kind of thing. Soldier camaraderie is the one word I was going for. He jumped me.
Sorry.
It's camaraderie. Somebody who shares your past.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty dang honorable, concept. And I like to think it's right. Now, you may hear something else. And if you do, let me know your side of the story. But that's what I heard from my father as I was growing up. It kind of faded out a little bit. Okay. And then it kind of started to resurge, probably in the, I'm going to say late 60s, early 70s, when Jeep was being advertised as the freedom machine.
Yeah.
And it was the way to get back to the outdoors. Mm-hmm. And they were pushing the advertisements, the old hand-drawn color advertisements that were easy to put in print rather than a photograph, which cost a lot more to put in print. And if you look back, and they always in the background had the MBs and GPWs in the background with a soldier. And what was he always doing? I got you, didn't I, Scott?
You did get me.
He always has his arm up, either in the V wave or the flat wave.
Okay.
Which was running the Jeeps, the all's clear. Mm-hmm. And so that history was promulgated by the advertisement, but it just caught on because everything else was changing.
It's a really cool story.
Changing rapidly.
Yeah.
Cars were changing. We were going from bulbous fenders to sleek to low to fast to hot rods to, but the Jeep never really radically changed. It still had 2 eyeballs and 7 slots. Mm-hmm. And even with the uproar of the square lenses and the YJs, it still was recognizable as the descendant of that first MB, and GPW. So that's the story I know, folks. I hope it's interesting to you. I don't know if it's 100% right, but if anybody can give me some alternates, I'd love to find it because I'd love to dig in and see what I can learn.
That's a perfect segue because he also asked about the 2.5 four-cylinder engines. And
good little engine, there's no question about it. A little bit lacking on the oomph department. But then again, we're going to go back. The 2.5 is a derivative of the 4.0, as I recall. Lop off 2 cylinders. GM copied it when they brought out the 4.3, cutting off 2 cylinders of the 350.
Yep, the Iron Duke.
All of these engines that were taking longer, more multiple cylinders and hacking them down. It makes machining and planning a whole lot easier. Sometimes you do have some surprises. So don't take a 4-liter crank and hack off 2 cylinders and try and run it because the timing is a little different.
Yes,
as far as what cylinders are where.
Yeah,
but the general idea is it's a cast iron block, cast iron head, 4-cylinder engine. Not going to give you
130 horsepower, I think, at max.
At max, it's not gonna race you up and down the mountains. But again, remember that the original Jeeps were maxed out at 45. Their average running speed was 35.
Yeah.
Okay, and it took a while for the DNA to wear off. So yes, you were still getting these in the 90s with the 4-bangers. And there are a lot of people that were buying them for literally for ag use or business use that didn't want the big V6 the big straight 6. It was considered thirsty, whereas the little 4. But you can tell that it really wasn't designed that let's go back to the CJs and YJs and those kinds of things. If you look at the CJ and put a 4-cylinder in it, it's back from the radiator a little bit, but not horrible. Same thing in the YJ because it's basically the same chassis and same frame. But you get to the TJ and you look at that thing and there's a freaking wind tunnel hooked up to the radiator to get back to the fan on the 4-cylinder.
Yeah. The big old piece of agriculture drain pipe, the radiator.
Pretty much. And so I've helped a lot of people change them out. In the old days, it used to be said it's cheaper to sell the 4-cylinder Jeep and buy a 6. Not anymore if you want the small body. If you can find a good quality, good bodied 4-cylinder, go ahead and use it as your basis because it's the same frame. Motor mounts are welded in differently, but other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. And
I've seen 410 gears to boot.
Yeah, if you're keeping them.
Yeah.
But it's a great starting point for a swap. I know people that buy them and just use them as is, which is fine. But they have to accept that in this day and age of a 4-cylinder engine putting out, 250, 300 horsepower, turbocharging and all the yeehaw, that's not here. This is a tractor engine. It's a good tractor engine, but it's a tractor engine.
Well, I drove my YJ for 9 years. Yep. And the reason why mine was actually fun to drive, again, 488 gears and 31-inch tires.
Yeah.
And plus I did, I gave a little bit more, I gave it a firepower ignition, a few other things. But I knew like around town up to 50 miles an hour, it was a hoot and fun to drive. Got on the interstate, things got scary.
Yeah, because it ran out of lungs.
It ran out of lungs, but low speed on the trails, it did just fine. Now, again, at the time when I was driving it, I didn't have any long, tall hill climbs, which I'm sure it would be lacking in power. But
no, you just drop a gear. You still low range is low range regardless, and with a 4-banger and low range, you could go lots of places. You just won't go as fast.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that used to say 4-cylinders were better because it took more time to get yourself into bad situations. So you had more time to realize you were doing something stupid.
Yeah. But it was more, the engine was closer to the firewall. But again, would I shy away from a 4-cylinder Jeep right now? No, if it said it was a clean body, YJ. But again, even though I am a ride or die Jeep guy, I'm not a fan of the 2.4 4-cylinders that were in the TJs. Those are the Dodge Neon motors.
Yeah,
aluminum block, aluminum head. I think it was.
They weren't very tough at all.
No, it had no business being in that Jeep. Sorry, Jeep, but it had no. Yeah, okay, it could rev higher. Well, so could the 2.5. I could run that at $3,000 all day. But again, I personally, of the 2 4-cylinders, I like the 2.5 better because, again, it's just that it fits the old technology of the Jeep, if that makes any kind of sense. But that's my 2 cents.
No, it's as valid as anybody.
Yeah.
The older engines, the cast iron blocks, are by default tougher. Mm-hmm. They are, if you let the oil run low, not out, but low, it will survive. It may be damaged, but it'll survive better than an aluminum block, which will gall, and the wear and tear and that kind of thing. So it's really, as with everything, you can make anything survive or you can kill anything depending on how you treat it.
Yeah.
Is it a powerhouse? No, we got to be honest about that. It's not. Is it serviceable for something in the Jeep's body range, weight-wise? Yeah, it is. And like Scott said, you back in the days of 55 mile an hour national speed limits, it was probably just you were at its max at 55, but you could make do with traffic. In today, with regularly getting up to 70 miles an hour and then having somebody blow past you at 80, and that was usually a state trooper, is he going up somewhere? Are you going to catch up? No. And I'm sure there are those, oh, well, mine's got this on it. Yeah, okay, yeah, that you can modify them to some degree, but is it worth the money to modify the 2.5 or just to do a motor swap? And now let's get on to the last part of that motor swap, which is what I hear all the time. Oh, can I buy a 4-cylinder and put the straight 6 in? Can you? Yes. Should you? Probably not. Okay, because you're putting 1950s technology in place of 1950s technology. You're just putting bigger 1950s technology in.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of the 4-liter 4.0. It's been a great engine. I've had a lot of fun with mine for 150 some plus thousand miles and experimenting, and it's been a great test bed because no matter what I threw at it,
oh yeah,
you turn the key and it fires up and runs, except when the coils blow out. But
moving on.
But today, if I stumbled across a nearly pristine 4-cylinder TJ, yeah, I would look at an alternate, more modern motor. We can get far better fuel mileage. We can get far better horsepower and torque ratings than we can out of the old iron, and lighten the load to boot. So it's sad when you can put a V8 in that weighs 75 pounds less than the straight 6 that came out, and probably about the same as the 4-cylinder cast iron that we're talking about here.
Oh yeah.
So
well, even like with the aggressive crawlers, they do the 3.6 conversions in the TJs.
Yep.
Because here you got almost 300 horsepower out of a V6 that weighs what? Well, it was like 60 pounds or something. A decent amount less. And you get the 8-speed to boot. It's like, But again, that's you choose the motor you want to. I wouldn't shy away from it.
Yeah.
If a deal was to be had, I'd buy it in a heartbeat.
Yep.
That's my opinion, anyways.
So next bite is, and do you remember the name of the gentleman that asked about cryo treating gears?
Oh, that is a good question.
Oh, I don't want to have anybody not get credit.
Yes, absolutely. That was Brandon.
All right, Brandon, cryo treating gears. Now, I wasn't clear whether your request was about gears you already had or buying them new as cryo treated. First thing I got to say is that if you already have a set of gears, I'd probably say no.
Yeah.
Cryo treating is simply heat treating on the lower end of the spectrum. Any heat treating is about changing the orientation of the iron and carbon molecules along with any additive metals by either heating them and quenching them and tempering, which is taking them all the way up to a certain point where the molecules are essentially in a plastic state, not the whole part, but so red hot to white hot even, and then quenching it, which hardens it. That sets it in a matrices grid that is extremely hard. The problem is it's too hard. It's brittle. So we temper, and tempering is about heating it up to a certain temperature below that really white hot point to relieve the internal stresses. In other words, there's too much bracing in the metal between the molecules, and it's too rigid. So I want to let some of them go. And there are different levels where you let them go. And what you're doing by tempering is you are softening the metal by degrees. Okay, and you want to reach that happy point in tempering of, all right, I am hard enough that I won't wear excessively, but I'm soft enough that I won't fracture the teeth off. The whole idea of cryo is going the other direction. Let's go down to a really, 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 really cold temperature, causing everything to contract. Okay? Think of it as thermal forging. Yeah, you know.
Okay,
and
that's fair.
You're pounding, you're pulling things closer together, and atoms will link or delink in certain ways. Here's the catch, though. Just like you have to start with the right alloy for tempering, you have to start with the right alloy for cryogenics. If you put common carbon steel in cryogenics, there's going to be no real effect once it warms back up. All right. If you use the wrong alloy, you can actually make it brittle. In fact, you can cause microfractures from the cooling. If you cool something down, if you cryo treat something that isn't the right alloy, it will shrink so hard that the harder, stiffer outer surface from a tempering might fracture. And you'll start to use it, and the faces will start to split off, you know, and crumble. So this is not a DIY area. Do I think it works? Yes. Back when I was working in engineering and we were doing things, we had things cryo-treated properly, but they were done by metallurgical engineers who specified not only the product, but the alloy and the machining and the thermal treatment followed by the cryo treatment. Is it worth it? Maybe if you're one of the guys in the Formula One circuit.
Okay.
You know,
no, that's fair.
Where you're really pushing things to their absolute limit, they would probably tell you yes. For the average wheeler who's out on the trail, probably not.
Invest in a better winch.
Yeah, well, or just invest in a best. Oh, it's pouring down rain outside. How about that? It's Florida. Who would have thunk we'd get rain?
Just give it 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. So
I invest in a nice set of gears.
Yeah, in a better quality set of gears. You know, go to a first name brand rather than the eBay good quality used gears.
Let me get some of them Maybrake.
Maybrake brand.
Yeah, Maybrake brand. Yeah, kind of like the just-in-time brakes.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So, is it a valid process? Yes.
Yeah.
Is it a DIY process? No. Okay. Does every piece of material that you get benefit from cryo treatment? No. There are certain materials that are better suited to cryo than others, but not every one of those. For example, bearings and bushings that go inside eyelets they're usually a soft metal mix, and they can be cryo chilled, dropped into their sleeve and allowed to warm up, and they will lock themselves in because they're malleable. They can take the contraction and the expansion without fracturing.
Yeah.
Gears are one of those areas that you're walking. Metallurgists go nuts with gears because I need it really, really hard, but I need it really, really strong. And it's got to be ductile so it can take that running into a rock at full throttle. Okay, those are three different criteria that are kind of all disparaged on each other. So, that's even one that I wouldn't play with, I'll be honest with you. Do I think they're worth it? If you want to spend the money, buy a set designed and made to be cryo-treated and have it cryo-treated by the manufacturer. You don't really need to spend thousands of dollars to be the guinea pig. And again, ask yourself, do I really need this? All right. Most gears, I'll be honest with you, I've only seen one or two sets at the shops that I work with where the face of the gear has failed. Okay. And I mean, the rest of the ring gear and the rest of the pinion are in great shape, but the face has cratered off. And it kind of looks like peeling paint, on drywall. It's just kind of peeling off. And that's a face failure. Well, that's the hardness of the gear. That's what cryo is going to help you with. As far as most of the failures we see, folks, are teeth busted off gears.
Yeah.
Well, that's ductility. That's the shock load coming in, exceeding the stretch because the gear was hardened to get that wear on the face characteristic. But in the body, they try to temper it down, which means reduces the hardness so that they flex more and rather than breaks. And it's hard to do that with something as massive as a ring gear and as a pinion gear. Think about that. Those edges that I want to do are going to cool quicker.
Yeah.
So it's hard to temper one and not the other. And they do it with certain alloys and certain coatings. And the gear manufacturers, the good quality guys, are really, really good at this. Mm-hmm. But again, cryo coating, I've not really seen a whole benefit in the wheeling arena. We don't spin our gears that fast. We're not a Formula One turning 6,000 RPM, burning down the road at 205.
If you're burning down the road in a Jeep at 205, you're on the back of a trailer.
Probably.
Or in an airplane.
Yeah, or have fallen out of the cargo bay. But the key is that, it doesn't match well with our abuse.
Yeah.
We're very much a shock load. In fact, I would take a softer gear and a shorter lifespan. Let's face it, a good set of gears can last the entire life of a vehicle. Think about how many people have done axle conversions. We always joke about I'm going to go put 1 tons on it. How many people actually replace the gears on those 1 tons? Most people go to the yard and pick the thing with the gears in it, and it probably has 128 to 160,000 miles on that axle. And what do? They clean it up, they slap new brakes on it, and send it out the door.
Yeah.
So we're not really destroying gear faces unless we ingest abrasive materials like sand and grit and stuff like that in water because of a bad vent system or a blown seal.
Yeah.
But we do crack off teeth.
Does a thick cut gear help that? Because I know I remember someone saying about a thick cut gear
versus a thin cut really is the base ring circle that the teeth are machined or molded and machined on. Okay. That chunk of metal that has the bolt holes that are threaded and goes up against your locker assembly or your carrier. Okay, and it's thick or thin by how tall it is to keep the gears in the correct spot for the pinion to reach them. Some carriers, the mounting flange is out, and it's because the gears are deeper because of the tooth count is going up, so you have to have a thicker base than a thinner base. And so there's 2 basic sizes of a thick and a thin. And yes, you can even buy spacers to take a thin and put it on a thick. Excuse me, folks, but you cannot put a thin-based gear, a thin-cut gear, on a thick-based carrier and even hope to have anything line up.
That's fair.
But no, it's really about the flexibility at the root of the tooth. If you were to look at them from the very edge and you see that ramp coming up and the relatively vertical side going back down, that is a tooth on the gear. At the bottom, there's where you're flexing it. And it's really, the impact is wherever that wear line, whenever you set up gears and you do your marking for your tooth contact pattern. At the center of that contact pattern, that's where the pressure is highest. Okay. And at that point, if you push on it so hard, it's like you pushing over a fence in your backyard. All right? If you push hard enough to snap that fence post off, you've just done a tooth failure in a gear. All right. Okay. What's that is, that's tension on the push side. It's compression on the back side. And when you exceed the tensile strength of the material, snap. All right. And that's not from the hardness of the material. That's the ductility. Ductility is about how far can I deform you and let you let go and you spring back. Does that make sense?
Not to be confused with the ductility of the ducts on the Jeep, ducts on the dashboard of a Jeep.
Oh, that reminds me. Folks, have you guys seen the latest memes out there?
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no.
You know, certain models of the JKs and JLs have a recessed trough in the hood, okay? The intake hoods. And somebody found out what that was for after a rainstorm, and it filled up, and they were floating ducks in it. And there were little tiny ducks swimming around the hood of the Jeep. I saw that, and I was like, oh, good grief. But you know what? The guy had a point. He said, I finally know what these hoods are shaped for.
Hey, they're a Jeep.
They're a Jeep. You know, they want to do it. Well, they didn't put them in there, but people who ducked them floated the ducks in the little. So, you know, there's supposed to be drain holes in that.
Upon further inspection, we found that.
Boo hiss. Oh. Anyway.
Come on, to two shows back to back. We got a duck Jeep, a cow Jeep that goes boo. I mean, come on.
All right, well.
Yeah,
hey,
don't cry foul.
Someday.
Excuse me.
What
we're talking about now, Jeeps.
Other tech subjects. I'm going to share what I started sharing several shows ago, but didn't really get into too much detail.
Wheelie. We're going to get into this one, huh?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Gosh, the pun master has arrived.
I'm laughing so hard I'm in stitches. All right. Look, whether you want to or not, we're doing this.
He won't stop, folks, until I slap him, but I won't do that, not at least not in front of the radio.
Let's steering this in the right direction.
If you haven't picked up the absolutely horrible cruise, my project at the moment, and has been honestly for the last really 2.5 months, I am reskinning, not overwrapping, but reskinning the steering wheel to my TJ. Mm-hmm. It's a product that's no longer made, and all you can buy are steering wheels on eBay and those other kind of sites that look worse than what mine did. But the leather had finally given up at the top of the wheel from all of those death grips. Death grip descents. I don't seem to squeeze it as hard on the hill climbs. That's because I can't see what I'm falling into. It's behind me. He's dying over here, folks. So I decided to see about, rewrapping it. Mm-hmm. And I bought one of those kits. You can buy thousands of them online. And it turns out that they don't work really well with multi-spoke wheels. They kind of, you're just covering over the old stuff. So I decided that I was going to see if I could rewrap a wheel. And I investigated a couple of my friends at different leather supply, different upholstery shops that did leather work. And they said, we don't do that. It's a bit of a PETA, which of course to me is just like somebody dropping the gauntlet. And so over the last couple of months, I have been teaching myself how to do a leather wrap steering wheel. To this point, I am nigh on my second attempt. The first one was going well, looked really good until I overstretched a seam and split apart some of the leather joints. By the time this show drops, it may be done. If it is, I will put some pictures out there. Small investment in tools. I will have to say that very small. The biggest thing I had to do was get a skiving blade, which probably means absolutely nothing to the listeners out there, but it's a little chisel-like thing that's got a ski jump for a blade.
It looks like a really wicked cheese knife.
It really does. It really does.
That's what it reminds me of.
And you use it to thin the leather. Mm-hmm. And it's taken quite a bit of practice to learn how to use it. So you cut a layer down without cutting through.
Yeah, it's a practice touch.
And at this point, I'm sitting here looking at the wheel on a little stand I made just out of a 2x4 and a piece of plywood so that it would hold the wheel. I found out trying to hold on to a steering wheel while we're working on the rim is really pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So it's got a big old bolt through the middle of it, a 5/8 bolt and a nut, so that I can mount this thing at a work height and sit in a chair. Mm-hmm. And of course, TJ's, Chrysler didn't cheap out on that. We've got 4 pieces of leather, 4 spindles, arms coming out, all of which have to be aligned. And then you learn about the circumference of a circle and the stretch of leather so that the finger grooves aren't little loose bubbles. And then what do you use? A waxed cord and sailor's needles. Fortunately, I knew what they were because I used to be on a sailing crew. But The first one went along really well, and I was going along and stretching it firm and getting it in the seams and the grooves and all that kind of stuff. And then I happened to look down and realize that I guess that last stretch was a little too much, where one of my seams went ooh, kind of like Billy Joe after too many pizzas goes to sit down in the chair and pants are a little tight.
Or like me at Fred's with the rice and tomatoes and fried green tomatoes.
Yeah, it splits out a little bit. So I figured out what was wrong and redoing it. I had copied patterns, but was not aware of the fact that the leather, once it's on the wheel and you've used it for decades of sweat and heat and sweat and cold and wet hands,
death grip,
it shrinks.
Right.
So my pieces were too small. They didn't have enough. They were stretched a little too tight. They went on, but they were stretched a little too tight.
Yeah.
Anyway, as I finish this up, successful or not, I will share with you the results and let you know, is it worth it to salvage? The leather itself was actually, I wouldn't call it cheap, because you ended up having to buy half a cow, because you either can pay $100 for a little square, or you can go to Tandy Leather. And yes, for folks that are old enough to know, Tandy Leather is still around. They're no longer associated with Tandy Electronics, better known as Radio Shack, and they're still in business, and they sell remnants. And for about $100, I got half a cow in black hide, with full graining.
Cool. So it was very handy when you called Tandy.
Yeah, it was.
Cool.
Go roll with the puns, bud.
That wasn't a pun. That was just a good alliteration.
At this point, I have 2 seams left to stitch. I am fitting, I tried the last one by making patterns off the old unit, stitching them together into a hoop and then stretching them on and then starting to stitch. But that didn't work. Obviously, I was a little too tight. So now I'm going joint by joint by joint. I've got 2 more cross seams to do, but I'm out of the dangerous parts, as I call it, where the weird shaped pieces of leather, and I'll put pictures up there as we get closer with the weird shapes of leather that have to be done to make this. Because again, the TJs, unlike a lot of them, the leather doesn't run straight. It rolls up into 4 spokes of the steering wheel, and so you have to cut them to roll up. And I did have another thing. I've got the skiving tool. I also have punches. I got lazy. Rather than punching each hole individually, I got the little ones that look like mini tiny digging forks, except that you put them down and go thunk, 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 and you pre-punch all your holes, so you get that nice perfect spacing. And then I will sit down here and commence with the stitchage, and we shall see how it goes, and hopefully it works out. I haven't gotten my final coat of my material that you put on the leather to kind of give it that protective coating. There's a material like that you either brush or you roll on, let it wipe it off a couple of times. It's kind of like varnish, but it's not varnish, it's leather sealer. But it's interesting. I've learned all about the fact that most things you buy are what they call 3-pound leather, or 3-ounce leather, which is not a steering wheel. Maybe a cheap steering wheel, but not a steering wheel leather. Yeah. That's clothing leather. This steering wheel, when I measured everything out and talked to some folks, Jeep actually went a little higher end. They're 5-ounce leather, which really is not about weight. It's about the thickness of the leather, and it gives it that thick grip, that kind of has that little bit of squish to it, so it's comfortable to grip onto. Yeah, gives you a nice something to squeeze hard when you panic going downhill.
Well, it's also a substantial piece,
very substantial piece of leather. So, but it cuts easy with a razor knife. Patterns are done. Nothing more fancy than a ballpoint pen. Leaves marks on the inside of the leather that are very easy to see, and found out that aggressive cutting isn't the secret. The secret to trimming is just a very light, repetitive touch, drawing it through like you see a doctor with a scalpel. And the next thing you know, you're on the board, and your piece is off, and you got a clean cut. So nice. It's going to be different. It's very, very different than turning wrenches and beating bodywork, but it's as much a part of a vehicle,
a restoration.
So we'll see how it goes.
And just in case everyone is those who want to know, why didn't you buy a steering wheel? We kind of covered this on the last time we talked about it. Is Kevin and I kind of like having the airbag. We're probably one of the odd ducks out. We like having the airbag. And while I appreciate the custom Grant steering wheels and that are kind of cool, I also appreciate the workmanship and the time it takes to revive a dying art.
Well, and that's kind of why I started to do this, was not so much that I had to do it. I did go to the junkyard and get another wheel. It doesn't fit perfectly. Chrysler used the same spline count and the same shape in a lot of cases, even in other Jeeps. But there's a different drive cog on the back of the TJ wheel that interfaces with the
clock
spring drive, just so that you don't overstress your clock spring. And ask me how I know. But
look, the Amazon guy's here.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I don't know, box still is out there, but that's other stuff. It's one of those challenges I put myself through to, can I really do this? You know, plain and simple. Can I make it passable enough that somebody doesn't go, oh, look at that hack job on the steering wheel, you know? And I've done a wooden wheel once, but it was a smooth grip on both sides, you know, and it had the aluminum ring, and that was on a sports car. It was an old sports car, and it was easy to do because you cut out the wood oversized, and the steering wheel with spokes and all that was already made, and the holes were already there. You just cleaned it up, and then a mixture of epoxy, and then you can use a lot of different things. I used an aluminum rivet system that you kind of worked your way around, all the way around, setting all these rivets, and then the whole thing was just ground and shaped by hand in a circle. And then you'd think it was exotic, but it was just a multi-layer of polyurethane and polishing it, and it turned out absolutely gorgeous. And I almost did that to this one, but I said, well, I don't really have a flat rim. I'm sure there's what they call a wire rim inside that wheel.
Right.
And besides, new skill. If it works, like I said, who knows? It may get a matching, because I got still almost half a cow left over in the box over there. And my center console cover is starting to look a little bit rubbed bare, and that's molded hide of the elusive Naga, I believe.
Do you know how many Nahagas were destroyed to make that?
Yeah. So we shall see. So
the elusive hides of the Naga. That's going to be my new book. All right.
Well, I think it's already been used a few times by others. But
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Nahaga hides. Steering wheel. Elixir. I don't know.
If you have any other tech bits that you'd like to have us chat on, please feel free to email us at
onthetrailpodcast@gmail.com or Facebook Messenger, Firstbook Messenger, doesn't matter. One of us will get back to you.
Yep. Exactly. Sooner or later, unless you're some girl in some foreign country that wants to, you know.
Am I going to have to edit this?
No, I'm just telling you that they're showing up. I'm deleting those.
Oh, no, those are bots. Yeah,
I know they're bots. That's what I'm telling you.
Okay, I was wondering where that message went. It's like, hey, how are you? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have to delete that. An hour later, it's gone. I'm like, delete the trash, took itself out. All right, cool. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's kind of the same thing. I'm going, okay.
It's kind of like the comments on our YouTube page. Nope, deleting that one.
Well, if you want to do that with your friends and family, that's your business.
That's what you do with frequent flyer mileage in your own time, not on our page.
So anyway, I hope you all are having a good time with your Jeeps. I hope you all are wheeling safely. And I do hope that you're wheeling tread lightly and wheeling legal. I'm not going to get on my soapbox again. I've gotten already a few comments. Thank you to those who said thumbs up.
The thumbs up kind of nice, because those are the ones we want.
And the ones that were, blah blah, I'm just going to go, you're entitled to your own opinion.
And I'll wave at you as you tumble down the mountain. Moving on. So with that note, it's time we lock the hubs and put the Jeep in 4 loops.
Hey, you got it right this time.
Yes, take nothing but pictures, memories, and our trash when you leave the trail, because we want to keep these trails open, like Kevin suggested, for our children's friends of children's, and nice people who say, hey, come on over and take a look at this new area.
Yeah.
So with that notion, we are going to let you all go for the next show, which will be 196 on October 15th.
Yeah.
At least I'm hoping so.
Give or take.
Lord willing. With that.
And the creeks don't rise.
And the creeks don't what?
Rise.
Oh.
You never heard that one?
I've never heard that
willing and the creeks don't rise. I'll be there.
Creeks. I thought you said Greeks, like Helen of Troy with the Trojan horse or something. I probably just really ruined everything. And a history teacher right now just swerved off the road going, the Helen of Troy and the Greeks with the Trojan soldier. What, Scott? I know.
Well, we were talking about some of that history stuff earlier today. So
I just muffin stuffed a lot of that into one bag. What? Come on, you've seen me clean the... I put all the tools back, but when it comes to cleaning up the trash around, I just muffin stuff everything in one bag and zip tie it, and off it goes.
So what the heck's muffin stuff anyway?
Oh, look at that time. Time to go. Look at that. Friendly show.
I just wanted to hear your explanation of it.
That's when you stuff things vigorously into a bag way too small.
So
okay, what this is spiraling out of.
20 pounds of you-know-what in a 5-pound sack?
Yep. With a running start.
Do you wear gloves or not?
At this point, my hands are already dirty from this.
Ew.
But anyways, thank you for all the tech little segments and bites, because I'm going to have to answer all the emails tonight saying, hey guys, we answered your questions on the show 7 times. But that's okay, though. It's a labor of love. We really do appreciate these questions coming in.
We do. We absolutely do. So again, as Scott said, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.